Hey guys, Pastor Sean coming to you today with today's daily devotion. We're in John chapter 12 today, and down around verse 24 it says, "Truly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it stands alone. But if it falls and dies, it produces much fruit." This weekend we talked about Joseph. We talked about how Joseph transitioned from season to season in his life, and how every time he transitioned from season to season, something had to die. And he gave up his coat of many colors. He left his coat at Potiphar's house, his master's coat at Potiphar's house. He left his prison coat when he came into the presence of Pharaoh, and then he took off his robe that Pharaoh had given him and put on the master's coat, the second in command over all of Egypt. And we went through all of that, but every time he transitioned into something new, something had to die. The old man had to die. The spoiled son of Jacob died and left his coat of many colors. The slave who had been sold into slavery died when Potiphar put the master's coat around him and said, "You're second in command in the entire house. There's nothing in this house that I will withhold from you except for my wife." Then he goes into prison and he puts on his prison clothes. But when he comes into the presence of Pharaoh, they take off his prison coat, and that prisoner dies, and the dreamer is reborn when he walks into the presence of Pharaoh. And then finally, Pharaoh takes off his coat, his dreamer coat, and puts him as a leader, makes him the leader of the Egyptian nation, and he is second in command only to Pharaoh. But every time he transitions, something has to die. And Jesus re-edifies this by saying a grain of corn, a grain of wheat, a stalk can only stand by itself. It's alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. When we transition in our lives from season to season, and God grows us and matures us through change, is at that point that something has to die. You cannot keep holding on to the past. You cannot keep holding on to yesterday. At some point or another, you have to let that go. You have to let that die, and new fruit, new life will be born. Jesus says, listen, it's great that I'm standing out here and I'm preaching the gospel and I'm telling you that I'm the Son of God. That's all wonderful. But until I die, the fruit that needs to be produced is not going to be produced. He says, unless that grain, that stalk of grain falls to the ground and dies, it won't produce fruit. But when it does, it will produce much fruit. Every time that Joseph transitioned and something in him died, spiritually, something had to be sacrificed and something in him died, he grew stronger. He grew into the man that God needed him to be. He grew into the ruler who was second in command of Egypt, who saved the Hebrew people from starvation. As a matter of fact, if you research that out, he saved most of the world from starvation because there was grain in Egypt. So, look at your life today. What are you holding on to? What coat are you still hanging on to? What thing from your past are you still hanging on to that needs to die so that you can start producing some fruit? Is there bitterness? Is there anger? Is there frustration? Is there heartache? Is there pain? Is there suffering? Let those things die and walk in newness of life. Every time Joseph let something in him die, every time he transitioned into a new place, God made sure that he put on a new coat. He put on a new coat every single time until he reached his destiny and was able to save the entire world. What are you hanging on to? It's holding you from your destiny. What are you hanging on to that needs to die, that is keeping you from where God wants to produce fruit in your life? Let it go today. Sacrifice it today and watch what God will do. I love you. Praying for you. Believe you're going to have a magnificent week. I will see you back here tomorrow. God bless you as always, is my prayer.